Hello everybody, Jamie here from FMSCOUT. In today's video, one of the most requested videos on the channel, judging by your guys' comments, is tips I can give you to end a losing streak on Football Manager 2020. So these tips I'm going to give you are based on the fact that your tactic is already pretty good, but you do end up going on a losing streak, as you can see on the screen right now. So you can see we dominated pretty much most of the first 2 months. And then after that, we lost 4 games in a row. We're going to talk about 8 things that you can potentially do to help you get out of this rut. Now, if you've played FM for a long time, you guys have all been in this situation, whether it's second season syndrome or it's just a fact of, you do go on a losing streak. It does happen. But if you did enjoy this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed. But let's get into method number 1. The first thing I want to talk about is kind of a tactical change. Now, as an example, let's say you've gone 25 games unbeaten. There's clearly nothing wrong with your tactic. It could be the fact that the other teams, the AI, have figured out your tactic and how your tactic plays. I'd honestly develop a defensive tactic, defensive mentality, and grind out a few acceptable results. Opponents will see your poor form, therefore they'll be less frightened, which results them in attacking more. That's how it works. This will leave space for you to exploit and score a few goals on the counter. Also, make sure you always have a plan B, a different game plan. The opponents have just figured out how to play against you, and that's usually the case. Another thing I want to talk about, which a lot of people don't tend to see, is reputation. Now, reputation, for example, if you are Norwich, like we are on your screen right now, and let's say the first 7 months, you end up being top of the league out of something, or let's say 3rd or 2nd, it might be the tactic is working because the AI look at your reputation and attack you, whereas you can counter and win. If you are at the top of the table in January, this changes, maybe even more. Then your tactic stops working because no one is giving you space to counter. That is what happens when reputation shifts. Through a lot of my stream saves, I've noticed that I always tend to beat a lot of the bigger teams as a smaller rep club, just for the fact that they will attack me, and I tend to play counter because their rep is so much higher than mine. They believe that they can just go out all attack and I will counter them and get a few odd results against the bigger clubs. And you'll probably notice that is why sometimes you just get destroyed by smaller teams because they don't give you the space to counter. The next thing is personality. Now, this is one of the biggest things on Football Manager, and over the years I've started to focus on this much more. Now, there was a time where I wasn't really worrying about personality before, until I noticed a few things. Now, I would always review your squad's personality. One way you can do this is by clicking the player and then looking on the right hand side, and it will tell you his personality. Now, it can be a bit of a thing to go through all of them just like that, so I would recommend go into your squad screen just here, go into your view, go to custom, customize current view, and make sure you find personality on the left hand side and drag it or add it to the right hand side, and then you can see on the squad screen all the personality just here. A few negative personalities that you should look out for is slack, casual, temperamental, unambitious, easily discouraged, low determination, spineless, and low self-belief. Any of these players, no matter how good they are, would not be in my squad. Players with negative personalities like the ones I've just mentioned, they will have no use in a crisis like this. They won't take responsibility, they'll make mistakes, and they will moan a hell of a lot. You want to be looking for more like professional, determined, leader types of personalities. If you have any resilient players, I wouldn't personally use them as well, unless you can mentor them. Now, you can mentor these players as well, don't forget, so mentoring does happen, but in a crisis, in a short-term crisis, mentoring isn't really the option, so I would go for personality over anything else. This brings me on to dynamics. Now, dynamics, if your team leaders have a negative personality, your team leaders can bring the rest of the team down. Yes, you will get a bit of backlash for selling a team leader potentially, but in the long run, if you've got positive and really good personalities for your team leaders, this will help massively throughout the rest of the team. Again, if you are in the middle of the season, this is not something you can do by just instantly selling a player, but it is something to think about for the season after, which the season after, if you had less negative personalities, you might not find yourself having these little bad runs. Now, we all know on FM there is some hidden attributes on every single player, such as consistency and relishes big matches, stuff like that. So one thing I would recommend doing with all your players is checking their report card. The report card gives you lots and lots of information that you could use. For example, with Ivan Perisic, you can see Perisic is a fairly inconsistent performer. Now, if this is orange, this is kind of like in the middle. Whereas if it's dark red, that means I generally stay away from them players. There is some cons that you can work on, but consistency would be probably a reason why you're on a losing streak. So if you're, like I say, if you're playing a full team of inconsistent players, or even 7 of them, it will make a big difference. But this could give you a lot of information on why you could be giving away a win streak. Now, I know you were waiting for this one, and this one is morale. Now, we all know Football Manager can be like Morale Manager 2020. A little bad run can just completely break your morale. You can see on the screen right now, we went on a 4-loss streak with Bayern Munich, and you can see the morale is fairly poor, quite poor. The morale is an indicator of the player's current mood and their mindset. The higher the morale, the more likely he is to perform well. At the end of the day, it's your job to keep the morale of your squad as high as possible. The higher the morale of your squad, the better performances will be. But be mindful, the higher the morale, the more chance of complacency, so you need to find the right line. Now, there is a little tip that I can give you to raise morale instantly, and this is a right click of the player. You go to speak about, you go to praise, and you praise their conduct. You press the top option, and generally they go from a very poor morale to a pretty decent morale. It's only a short-term option, so you can see, for example, Thomas Muller is currently fairly poor. We're going to right click again, we're going to go to speak about, we're going to go to praise, and we're going to praise his conduct, pressing the top option, and he goes from very poor to fairly okay. So that is a really easy way of just keep talking to your players and you know, interact with your players. That is the best way of getting the morale up. The next one is team meetings. Now, team meetings are very important, but they are also very risky. If you get it wrong, there's a potential that it can make things even worse. So I would use this at kind of your own risk. You've seen my streams before. Sometimes I actually avoid some team meetings sometimes just because of the risk, and I'm scared to make it worse. But a lot of people do use team meetings, and it's a way to get the whole squad and give them a little boost. Now, your options are completely up to you, depending on what your squad has done. And yeah, team meetings will raise the morale of every single player if you get it right. And this can be a difference between a win or a loss in the next game. And at this point, you definitely want that win. The next one is press conferences. Now, we know a lot of people don't use press conferences on FM because they find it a little bit tedious and things like that. But sometimes press conferences can actually help you out. They can send a player's morale. As an example on the screen right now, you can see they are talking about Lucas Hernandez. Now, if I go to the press and say this guy is terrible, that is not going to do anything for the guy's morale. It's going to make him worse, and the chances are the next game is going to play bad as well. So you have to, you know, be a little bit careful when it comes to press conferences, and make sure you select the right options, give them a little bit of faith, and try the press conferences that way. The final one is private conversations with your players. Now, one thing that a lot of people tend to do if they're on a bad run is they shout at the player. Now, we're going to do that right now, so I can give you an example on Corentin Tolisso. Now, his last 5 games is at a 6.80, and he's played 10 appearances this season. So he's been in the team the entire season. And his performances in the last few games haven't been good enough. If we right-click the player, go to Speak About, go to Warn Player, and Criticise Recent Form. And then you say your form has been declining recently, try and pick yourself up in the next few matches. Generally, if they have been playing pretty poor, they will respond with this message saying, you're right, I haven't been playing well, I will work hard and prove my worth. But with this, I would just be a little bit careful. If a player has generally done well over the last 5 games or 3 games, he will come back and it will annoy him a little bit. So don't judge it off the average rating of the entire season. Make sure you add a column with the last 5 games just so you can see what they've done, and you can speak to the players individually who has not been performing. One more thing actually is renewing contracts. Now, although it will cost you money to renew contracts, this will show the player that you have some confidence in him, and it will give him a small little boost. Now, you do need a bit of money for this, of course. Sometimes, you know, you can get contracts for around the same price. just a few more bonuses, and that will generally give the player a boost, and it'll make, like I say, he believes that you've got confidence in him because you've given him a new contract. Now, the next one is training. So is your training correct? Is it too odd? Is it too light? After looking at our training guide, we're pretty sure training well improves performances. I will leave the link in the description, the video that we've done on training and some schedules and a different style for your training, and it proved to be very popular, so I will leave the link to that in the description. But generally, if your players are unhappy with training, it will affect morale, and one way you can look at the training, you will get it through your inbox quite a bit, but if you go to your training section, go to training happiness, you'll get a little list just here. You can see right now the players are fine with the training, the content, but if you press the training happiness, you can have a little look at their details. Now, very important to see what their details is and how they feel about their training. This could be a reason why it's kind of dropping the morale a little bit. Another thing is you might also be training them into jadedness as well. If too hard, or not keeping them fit if too light. Also, you might be training wrong, like not making them train defending or attacking. In essence, if you don't practice, you're going to get worse. Another thing that you can do to help the morale regarding training is doing team bonding, community outreach, and teamwork. But be mindful, this could affect other aspects of training, doing this during the season. This is generally done throughout pre-season. But if you wanted to do this, you just go onto your training calendar, go to the one that you want to select, and then just press defending, and you can just go to extracurricular, and you can do community outreach and team bonding. You can see that their happiness is greatly increased and their team cohesion is also increased as well. The next one is organising a friendly. Now, you should organise a friendly at home against lower level opposition. The idea is to score some goals, win some games, and you can praise your players and they begin to feel much, much better. Now, you guys probably know this, but if you go to select your friendlies, you can do it in between. Be mindful, of course, with your fitness and stuff like that. But if you play a very small rep team, someone who you will generally get 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 goals against, this will really boost your team for your next game. The final one is to watch your jadedness with your players. Now, playing the same players, they get jaded and will not perform like they can. Usually the most problems in early February comes from that. So it's basically when a player plays too many matches and gets physically overworked, he will lose the motivation to put in 100% effort, which you can see on your screen right now. You usually see the RST, which means he needs a rest and he is jaded. Now, I would seriously watch this when it comes to playing these type of players, but this does bring me on to rotation. So no rotation and over rotation. This is a tricky one and it depends on your team, but is the reason that you've gone onto a losing streak because you're over rotating and getting no consistency? Or are you not rotating and the players are getting slack and complacent in matches where rotation will likely be the factor to you get out your losing streak? And that is the end to the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Hit that like button if you have enjoyed it. But do let me know in the comments as well if you think there may be some more things that you can do to help get out of a losing streak, because I can make another video on this if we have more. You know, it's a very big subject. It's a very debatable subject as well. So let me know in the comments what you think to this. But apart from that, that is Jamie out. Goodbye, everybody.